Thank you for being with us tonight. Welcome. My name is Randy Zucker, and I'm the Director of Arts, Community, and Culture at the JCC of Central New Jersey. And together with our partners at the Holocaust Resource Center at Kean University, we'd like to welcome you this evening for our Conversations with Authors series, where we celebrate the power of storytelling. I want to take a moment to also thank the Jewish Book Council for their support to enrich and educate our community through Jewish literature. Our partnership with them and the Holocaust Resource Center at Kean is invaluable, and we so appreciate working with them. Please note that we will be putting in the chat a link where you can purchase a copy of Lisa Barr's book, The Goddess of Warsaw. In addition, we want to encourage a lively discussion. So feel free to post your questions in the chat. And I am now very pleased to introduce Lisa Bleish. Lisa is the chairperson for our One Book, One Jewish Community book read, and one of our most active readers. She has taken on the leadership role of growing our committee and encouraging active participation. And clearly you can see by the size of our audience today that she's doing an amazing job. Please join me in giving Lisa a very warm welcome. Hi, Lisa.
Thank you. Thank you, Randy. As you know, this is one of my favorite jobs that I have, which is being the chair of the One Book Committee and the authors Conversation with Authors series. Before I begin, I just want to thank everybody on our committee. We read a lot of books and they spend a lot of time going through them all. In May, it's a flurry of reading everything. We read a ton of books before we make our decision. And this year we had an amazing, really a wonderful selection to choose from. Among them, this wonderful book by Lisa Barr, Goddess of Warsaw. And we feel very fortunate this night because I feel like I'm welcoming back an old friend. Lisa was at the JCC. It's actually her second time speaking to our community. She was our first in-person post-COVID One Book author in 2022. Lisa Barr is the New York Times and USA Today's best-selling author of The Goddess of Warsaw, Woman on Fire, The Unbreakables, and the award-winning Fugitive Colors. Lisa served as the editor for the Jerusalem Post and managing editor of today's Chicago Woman, managing editor of Moment magazine, and as editor and reporter for the Chicago Sun-Times. Among the highlights of her career, Lisa covered the famous handshake between the late Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin and the late PLO leader Yasser Arafat and President Bill Clinton at the White House. Lisa has been featured on Good Morning America and Today for her work as an author and journalist. And for those of you who don't remember or didn't know, actress Sharon Stone has option rights to adapt her Woman on Fire for a film. So I'd love to hear some progress about that because that had just come out last time we met. So please join me in welcoming Lisa Barr, who is joining us from a much warmer Florida tonight. So thank you for coming.
Hi, so great to be back. How are you?
I'm good. I'm very good. I'm
Good,
happy
good.
to have a conversation with you again. So for those of us, in our audience who haven't read the book, it would be great if you could just give us a brief synopsis and also just give us a sense of what inspired you to write The Goddess of Warsaw.
So, as you know, and just to let you know, I'm recovering from laryngitis. So I know you're here to see Lisa Barr, but you're going to get Brenda Vaccaro. Exactly.
That's okay. We'll take it.
I'm very hoarse, but we'll be fine. Inspiration first. As you know, I really have sort of specialized in writing about Nazi looted art. That's kind of been, I'm not that I'm a quasi expert, but so much research, went into Nazi looted art. And two of my books have that in the background. I, as a daughter of a Holocaust survivor from Poland, always knew that somewhere in my book life, I was going to write about the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, which is the most important Jewish uprising during World War II. It set the stage for other uprisings that happened. It created a domino effect. It was Many of you in the audience probably know about the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, but the basic behind it was those trapped in the Warsaw Ghetto really felt they were not going to survive. And if they were going to die, they were going to take the Nazis with them. That was the basic behind the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. They were going to fight back. And for me, I knew I was going to write a story about a woman who is at the center of fighting back. And the book is about a young actress, around 23 years old, who becomes a Jewish resistance fighter, actually becoming an assassin. And it's not a spoiler if you read the book, because you learn in the first chapter she is going to survive. But she is going to not only survive, she is going to become one of the greatest actresses in Hollywood, a femme fatale whose personal war never ends. So the book is going to move from Warsaw to Hollywood, and from Warsaw, 1943, Hollywood in the 50s, to right now. This actress is going to have the first line, the last act, down to the last page of the book. So I loved writing this story. And so that's just a little overview of the book.
Right. And you mentioned that you're the daughter of a Holocaust survivor. And so I'm wondering, did you ever feel on some level that you were exacting your own revenge through your writing? And you said it was really fun, but were there ever any parts of it that were also disturbing as you were writing the book?
I want to reword the word fun. This was
Yeah.
not fun to write because it's a very tough topic, but the story just flew out of me. And so it was a story. I mean, the fun part was, how do I write a book about the darkest chapter in Jewish history and yet give it a Hollywood twist and make it a page turner? So fun, I would like to take that word back, but say it was challenging. It was exciting to write.
Yeah.
Um, uh, I knew I was going to write a book about revenge. This book, from beginning to end, is about revenge. From the get-go. I think what was really fascinating about this book is, sort of how, writing this book that I began researching 4 years ago about a topic that took place 81 years ago, how it is so eerily relevant right now. And so this book is the book that I'm very, very proud to be touring with during these times. A book of Jewish resistance, Jewish resilience right now. Has probably never been as important to me as it is right now. Touring on a book that really reflects history that has really come alive right now.
Yeah, no, I think it's so timely. Sadly, it's so timely because it was an exciting book to read, and it was also eerily too much what's happening a little bit right now. They're not obviously
Yeah.
not as much, but nonetheless, it was an eerily representative of where we are right now. How do you think your nearly 30 years as a journalist impacted your fiction? Because as you said, you're touring on something that you wrote that would happened 81 years ago, but yet it's reflecting similar things to what we're seeing right now. So what was it like going from a journalist to an author? And tell us a little bit about what was easy to become an author of fiction from journalism, and maybe if there was anything that was challenging in that.
So yes, so I have been a journalist all my adult life. I always say you can take the girl out of journalism, but not the journalism out of the girl. So my journalism background informs my fiction. I think it's a blessing and a curse. A blessing because I know how in a chapter to give the reader the who, what, when, where, and why, and leave you with a cliffhanger. This is my boot camp, my training. A lot of my historical fiction friends might take 5 sources and call it a fact and throw it in the book. But my intensive journalism training as an investigative reporter, I need 20 sources to call it a fact until I'm on repeat. So it takes me longer to write a book than a lot of my historical fiction colleagues because of my journalism training and background and my demand of myself that I get it right, that it be authentic, that no stone goes unturned. So everything that you read in The Goddess of Warsaw that feels real is real. Ooh, I think, do we lose? Are we still on?
We're still on. I think Ellen started a whiteboard and I don't know what that is. So
Oh,
Ellen,
okay,
if you
so
can just
yeah, something strange just came through. But
we'll
as
get rid
long
of
as
it.
we're still
We're
simpatico,
still good.
we're
Okay,
here,
we're good
we're
now. We're
back.
good. There was
Okay,
a little whiteboard. I think they wanted you to draw a picture, just
I
like
drew a
Alex.
picture.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and maybe do a little diagram or
I
something.
love art. I write about art, but I'm not an
Yes.
artist. Um, so everything, as I was saying, that you read in this book, and if you want to talk about some of the details, but it is real. And I'm in my happy place when I'm surrounded by research. This book, just to give you a basic picture of it, my first book, for example, Fugitive Colors, I researched it for 4 years before I would allow pen to paper. I went to Europe, I did interviews, I really was very intensive about the research, even giving the final product to the US Holocaust Museum to make sure it's right. Because when you write about World War II fiction, it's one thing. When you write about World War II, but take a Holocaust perspective, you have to get it right, because there's always going to be some reader somewhere who's going to say, my mother was there, my grandfather was there. That's not how it happened. And so for me, as I mentioned, as a daughter of a Holocaust survivor, it is crucial that I get it right. With this book, in terms of research, I also interviewed a survivor of the Holocaust, of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. This was crucial to the authenticity of this book. And just to give you a little bit about her, because, when you read in the book that Bina Blonsky, who's the main character, she was looking for her from her apartment across the street into a convent where she taught the children drama. This actually happened. This was the woman that I interviewed, her viewpoint, her vantage point from her own apartment, her family's apartment in the ghetto. The sights, the smells, the sense, the feel, everything is authentic. That was really, really important to me to get it right in the book.
Did you go to Poland before you wrote
So
this?
yes, but this was earlier for Fugitive Colors.
Oh, for Fugitive Colors. Okay.
Yeah,
Got it. Yeah.
yeah.
Did you go for this book? Did you go to Poland?
Not for this book, I did
Not for
not.
this book. Yeah.
But there was one story that I want to share with those in the on the Zoom here. So this woman, Estelle Laughlin, who sadly recently passed away. I don't know if you've ever had this moment, but when I walked in the door to interview her. I had my purse on, my tape recorder, everything. And she held out her hands, and I held them with two hands. And I'm telling you, we never let go. I didn't even take off my purse. I was like my grandmother with the schlepper purse, doing the interview and not letting go. And she told me this one story that did not make it into the book, but it's the one story that I take with me. And she was 10 years old. Her father was was a professor in Warsaw. Her mother was a librarian. So she was around books and education her whole life. But she said that every single day, and before I tell you what she said, you have to understand everyone around this little girl was dying in the ghetto from disease and starvation or being rounded up. And she said, but every single day, her father would make her take French lessons. French lessons. Who needed French lessons when you're trying to survive? But she said those French lessons is what really gave her the goods to survive mentally through the Warsaw Ghetto uprising and later on through 3 concentration camps. And her father did not survive the ghetto. She said, but those French lessons did. He wanted to give her a vision of her future, that one day she would go to the Champs-Élysées and drink cafe au lait. One day she would buy beautiful dresses in Paris. He gave her a vision, his little girl, of her future, that she would survive. And that's what she took with her all the way through. And I will never forget that from Estelle Laughlin.
Yeah, that's an amazing story.
Yeah.
And I felt very much like I was right there with those artists, with those young, people that were there that were um, sharing art, trying to create a sense of normalcy in the midst of everything else that they were doing. It became it was a very vivid depiction, because even though they're going through all of this horrendous stuff, they're still going to have a Seder. They're still going to do something that's artistic.
Yes,
Um,
and on that point, if I may,
yeah.
this was really important. There were 400,000 Jews in Warsaw. This was the largest Jewish community that was seized from their homes and put into the ghetto. In the beginning, it was crucial that they did everything to normalize their life. There were comedy clubs, there was a symphony, there were cafes, and music and life and sex and relationships. Everything was normalized. In fact, the smugglers, because books were forbidden, they smuggled food, medicine, and books for the children. So I really wanted to convey that normalcy in the beginning, in the ghetto, what they did to normalize life for those living and trapped in the ghetto.
Right. I mean, you did a great job of that. And speaking of sex, I would say that Goddess gets kind of racy in
That's a little
part.
racy, Lisa.
Yes, it gets a little racy. And I heard that one of your writer friends who read an advanced copy of The Goddess told you, no one writes passionate Holocaust sex like you do. Can you just can you discuss how you infuse passion within your Holocaust stories and why you write love triangles in your books?
Yes. So I just want to say that if you asked 10 authors, would you rather write a slasher scene or a sex scene? 9 out of 10 would say a slasher scene. I'm number 10. I'm on the other side. And the reason is one, obviously, the human connection. But sex scenes, I find, if they're done well, you have your characters at their most vulnerable, okay? They're literally naked. Sex scenes, as we know, are not about the sex, what's going on. It's what's going on in someone's head at the time during this. And it's usually moving the plot along. So I like to utilize sex scenes as plot movers to get to learn the most intimate parts about a character, but also to really advance the plot. And so those scenes are very important. It's no secret in this book and in other books of mine, I love triangles because, you know, you can remember in junior high, the most drama was 3 girls in junior high. Threes are a lot of drama and things happen in threes. Well, in my books and in this one, no secret and no spoiler because you learn in the first 2 chapters
Yeah.
that Bina Blonsky is married, but in love with her husband's brother. But this triangle was purposeful because Jacob, who was her husband, he was brilliant, a journalist, and he was part of the movement in the ghetto called Oneg Shabbat, based on a real life character, Emmanuel Ringelblum, who brought a group of intellectuals together, and basically they created a play by play of what happened in the ghetto interviews, observations. They wrote down everything. These were the intellects of the ghetto who took those real life observations and buried them in milk cartons underground. And after the war, these milk cartons were opened and discovered, and there was a real life depiction of what happened in the ghetto. But in Bina's mind, there was that side, and there were those who were the resistance fighters. Hence, Jacob's brother, Alexander, of course, an artist, very passionate, sexy, attractive, but who couldn't sit and just paint and depict what happened in the ghetto. He wanted to fight back. So for my purpose as the writer, I wanted to showcase both of these movements going on in the ghetto through these men, Alexander and Jacob.
Right. And that was actually my question. So thank you for answering and
Sure.
asking and answering that question. I had that exact question there. Do you feel that as an artist that there is this tension between the need to want to preserve, to want to be a witness to what's happening, and then to do and to move forward? Do you feel that
Yes,
yourself?
both sides were important. The day by day evidence, because the Nazis wanted to annihilate the truth. And so that was Jacob based on Emmanuel Ringelblum, knowing, and Emmanuel Ringelblum, the real life character, did not survive the ghetto, but his words did. His evidence did. What happened to the Jews in the ghetto were, showcased through what he did. This was extremely important. And those warriors, those who fought back, which were, men, women, and children were fighting back. This was essential. Obviously, some of them survived, but what happened was the Nazis, knew that there was this uprising in the ghetto, and they thought, you know what? We are going to quash this in a day. And in fact, they came into the ghetto with their tanks and their state-of-the-art weapons, but they were singing. They were goose-stepping and singing, and had no idea that there were bombs beneath them that exploded, and that this uprising that they thought was going to be 2 days and done actually was a month of fighting back. And so this revolt, the Jews of everywhere in Europe heard about this. And this was a signal to the Jews of Europe, fight back if you can.
Right. You mentioned Reingold, were there any other characters based on real people?
Yes, almost every character in this book was based on real people or composites. And in fact, I don't know if you know this, but many of the resistance fighters, that's why were women. That's why the head of my resistance was a woman named Zelda. Many of them were young, 25 and younger. Zelda was 25. Women were at the forefront of fighting back. Women were the smugglers. Women were the couriers trying to deliver messages to the world to say, hey, this is what's going on, or hey, we need weapons to fight back. Many of those women did not come back alive. Okay, but women were at the forefront. Women were the doctors. Women were going out to bring food back. Women who looked like Bina, blonde, blue-eyed, who could pass for Aryans, were going out there and doing whatever they could to help their loved ones and people trapped in the ghetto. So,
Yeah,
women were doing a lot, and I
they were
wanted to
doing a lot, and they were
showcase.
so young. I mean, that was the thing
So
that was
young,
so shocking. They're so
so young.
young. I mean, our kids' age, right, or younger even, and it was astounding how much they were doing and how devoted they were.
Yes.
Dawn wanted to know if the chronicles were published.
Yes, they have.
Yeah.
There have been many books on this Oneg Shabbat group and on the life and times and what Emmanuel Ringelblum did. So yeah, for those who want to look into it, there's a lot out there.
Was the without giving a spoiler away, but was the scene in the synagogue with the
With
girls,
the women, yes,
is
that
that true?
was for me the hardest scene to
So
write.
hard.
But I did all my research in the Illinois Holocaust Museum, so I actually had a copy of the note that one of the women, young girls, left. So it is a very difficult scene. Every time I would have to go back during edits to write it, I really struggle. And especially as a mother of three
Of
daughters,
course.
it
Yeah.
was very difficult. But yes, that is true.
Yeah. When I read that the first time, I was like,
It's
this
it's
is
a
so
it's
bad.
not a well-known um,
Yeah.
uh, piece of history, and I only came upon it because I got the decree by uh, um, the commanders there who wanted to create two sets of whores out of Jewish women. Those for the special for the officers and those for the lower level soldiers. And once I started researching that, I found out more of what happened.
Mhm. Right. So how difficult was it to capture Jewish history's darkest chapter and create a page turner with a Hollywood twist? What was
Well,
the
so
Hollywood and Holocaust?
so anyway, it was difficult, but real life events enabled for it to weave seamlessly. After the war, two things. And this is a stain on America, and it's called Operation Paperclip. It's not a spoiler, it's in the book. Excuse me, I'm just going to take a
Yes,
sip of water.
of course.
So, Operation Paperclip was during the Nuremberg trials. America, the Allies came in and they rescued 1,600 top level Nazis, engineers, scientists, technicians. You know a bit about it from Oppenheimer, the movie. But
Right.
they came in and rescued them, brought them to the United States, and gave them new identities. And the reason being, from the American defense, was that they needed the greatest minds of Germany to help them in the race for space against the Russians. And as you know, Werner von Braun, who headed NASA, was a Nazi and met, as I said, 16 others. So I wanted to bring this piece of history in. And as you know, Bina Blonsky, who becomes Lena Browning in Hollywood in the 1950s, would exact revenge on a few of these Nazis who came through on Operation Paperclip. In addition, there were many Nazis who were propagandists who escaped justice, came to Hollywood, and they wanted to create, so they were sort of the Hollywood Hitlers, a studio based in LA for Nazi propaganda. As you may or may not know, Walt Disney himself was a Nazi sympathizer and actually brought Leni Riefenstahl, who I talk quite a bit about in the book, brought her to Hollywood and gave her the red carpet treatment in the late 1930s. So it was a very easy segue for me to go from Warsaw to Hollywood and to bring my character in and also bring about and to showcase the real life events that were happening among these Hollywood Hitlers.
And was that location that you had in the Palisades, which probably would have been burned down now, but was that actually
That's
where
real.
it was?
That's real. Yeah.
That's real, really. I
That's
grew
real.
up right near the
Kind of
Palisades,
give you the
so
address.
I knew exactly as you were describing it. I knew exactly where you were,
You could get in your
taking us.
car and drive it. You put it on GPS.
But did that really happen? What you
No,
described?
in the end, with working with the FBI, it never got off the ground. But
Okay.
so, but their cafes and their planning and all, the brown shirts and all those things that were there, were true. And so the FBI working with, a lot of people during that time foiled a lot of these things. But I wanted to bring it to light.
Right. So you mentioned the idea of revenge and how it's such a powerful theme throughout the novel. Do you feel like Bina Blonsky's avenged her loved ones at the expense of her own happiness? And why do you think that price tag is worth it to her?
So I'm just gonna grab something here and read it to you to answer that question. Just give me a second because it's right here. And I wanted to give you a quote that exactly answers that from Lena Browning's own words in the book. Okay, it's very short. So, Lena Browning, as she says, I have spent my life as an actress. It is the only way I could breathe. Like you, I kept my past hidden from everyone, but on the side, I did what I had to do, serving justice while the world looked the other way. It is the only thing that has given my life meaning. The war is long over, but not for me, never for me. So this woman has spent her life unable to really move on from the war. She went on for her, and as you may learn through one of the characters, Zelda, who headed the resistance and who was a mentor to Bina Blonsky. But for her, she, even though she became, a Hollywood goddess, she spent her life avenging her loved ones. She couldn't get past it. I talk a lot about my grandmother, who was a Holocaust survivor, who lost her whole family, all of her cousins and nieces and nephews in Auschwitz. But she went the opposite of Bina Blonsky. She lived her life in love. Her triumph or her victory or her survival was seeing her family and her legacy. Bina Blonsky, my character, took the opposite route.
Right.
So
and you show that parallel, another character who chooses love,
and another character kind of goes the route of my
Right, of your
grandmother.
grandma.
I wanted to
Well,
showcase both sides.
no, which is so important. And one thing I noticed, and I don't know if this was intentional, but Bina despises Konrad Stobieski, Stach's father, who is a Nazi and mercilessly kills everyone she loves. But they
Yes.
actually have quite a bit in common. They both have forbidden lovers who choose someone else. They both spend their lives seeking revenge, driven by hate. Were those similarities intentional?
Um, I don't want to give away anything in the book
Yeah, I
because
tried to
I,
keep
I,
it
I
vague, but
think
yes.
I think this might. So I'm going to say it wasn't intentional in terms of him, but once the reader and and you know his character unfolds, you
Right.
will see similarities for sure.
Okay. Okay, got it. And one of the things I noticed at the end, and I think I've read this and seen this, is that a lot of times Holocaust survivors just want to put it behind them. They don't want to talk about it, and that is something that was a theme throughout the book. You've obviously spent your whole time interviewing people who are Holocaust survivors and getting those stories. Did you find that you were perhaps the first person that some of them ever spoke to about what happened, or
I
did you find the
I
talking
don't
to them?
think so. I don't think so. I think there might have been things that they felt comfortable sharing with me that maybe they hadn't shared, but I don't really know what those things would be exactly. So I feel like the people that I spoke to probably had shared their stories before. You know,
And
it wasn't like they said nothing to their family and
right.
bearing their soul to me. I feel like I asked some strong, pointed questions. I mean, I think for Estelle, for example, trying to remember certain smells and scents of the ghetto, maybe that wasn't asked of her too much. But as a writer and as someone who is trying to really recreate and very much a stickler for authenticity, perhaps that might have been a first for her.
Interesting. Let's talk a little bit about your process. So, bringing a book into the world, it seems like there's the idea, there's the research, there's the writing, there's the editing, and then there's the marketing or the promotion. What part of the process do you like the most? What part do you like the least? Or do you like them all differently? And what part do you think was easiest for you to transition into from your journalism background?
So, I mean, obviously, I know how to research. I'm very well trained in research. I know where to go, go to get my answers. I'm also very aware, and this is my journalism training, that you don't want to leave the readers wondering, hey, what happened to X, Y, or Z? So, I know as a reader, if I read a book and I say to myself, whatever happened to Emily? They never went full circle.
Yeah.
I make it a point to make sure if you read about Dina, say, and you're like, whatever happened to that little girl, you are knowing if you're going to read one of my books, you're going to find out. I make it a like my mission not to leave in my process, not to leave the reader wondering whatever happened to. Um, I think my favorite part of the process is when the book is written, all the edits are done, and I'm kind of reading the last rounds, and I'm kind of like kicking back and enjoying it and knowing I went through the blood, guts, and sweat. I did it all those times. And so I kind of have a little quirk ritual where
Yeah.
when I'm at that moment, I read the whole book aloud to my dog, who loves every word, but she doesn't leave my side. But it's really important because you have that last edit, so to speak, where if something's wrong, you hear it, you know it. So when I'm at that point in the process, the bulk of the book is done. I think um, uh, some of the edit process, if say you're turning in the edits and someone says, or one of the editors might say, hey, can you change X, Y, or Z? One little change is a 3-month fix. That part is not fun. So, um, you know, there's different parts. The editing process is grueling, and parts of it I love, parts I don't love. It's just pretty much all the way throughout. It's very interesting with this book, and I'm sure we're going to talk about this, but as you know, anti-Semitism in the book world has been off the charts. And I've
Right.
been one of the authors who have been among the most hardest hit because I'm a daughter of a Holocaust survivor. I'm very pro-Israel on my social media, and I write about World War II novels that are Holocaust themed. So I have been very, very hard hit. So I would say the one thing, and this relates to your original question, is you kind of fall in love with your character, you're in sync with them. But I have never, in all my books, before this book and this character, have actually looked to a character to help me personally, to inspire me, to get me through these hard times. I would say, okay, this has been hell. What would Bina Blonsky do in this
Yeah.
moment? So I know this sounds a little wackadoodle, but I've
No,
actually
not at all.
looked to my character to help me navigate during these tough times.
Well, they're very inspirational because they do keep going and they're also very resilient in terms of everything that they do. So you said that you've been hit really hard. I mean, it seems like your book is doing really well, like from a not from a box
Yes,
office,
the book is a
from a
bestseller.
sales standpoint. So
Yeah,
tell us a little bit about the Artists Against Anti-Semitism and that new anthology on being Jewish now, and
okay, so
how that helped and factored in.
the book, thank God, is doing very well. It's a bestseller and it's doing well. But um, when October 7th happened, and you and I you interviewed me for Woman on Fire.
Right.
So my book had just, you know, been out a short time. And within 2 weeks, and I know this because I was interviewed by the New York Post about anti-Semitism in the book world. And right after October 7th, Woman on Fire, and I'm not saying this is a brag, but it had all 4 and 5-star reviews.
Right.
After October 7th, I received 457 one-star reviews
Oh my
within
goodness.
2 weeks in order to tank my books. For me,
Wow.
that's just an example, and it's called review bombing. In order to tank a writer's work, so people don't want to read it because their reviews have, gone way down.
And is that through a bot or how is that? How are they doing that?
They do it through Amazon and Goodreads.
But through, is it like a bot that does it and goes in and does it,
Not
or
just
there's
about either a bot or a real person who is anti-Semitic, anti-Israel, who can actually write a review and
amazing.
tank your book. And so those are real, they have to be real sales for those reviews to take place. And this was already after Woman on Fire had come out, but this is one example. On my social media for 6 straight months, I received at least a minimum, and I'm lowballing here, of 50 Hamas types, telling me, die Jew or your daughter should be raped all
Oh
day
my
long. And so I had to slay the dragons right and left. But if you know me, I do not cower in the face of hate and anti-Semitism. I fight back. I will not cower in the face of that. So while this was going on, a group of authors, a small group, which began in a group chat, there were 5 or 6 of us. And at that time, Jewish students were at the front lines of anti-Semitism on our revered college campuses, all the Ivy League schools especially, that were doing nothing to help our students navigate this. And so we said, what can we do to help these Jewish students using our words or whatever we can do, or our social media platforms? So those 5 quickly turned into 35 authors, and we began the Artists Against Anti-Semitism. Those 35 authors turned into over 100 authors joining us. And within a few weeks, we didn't know what we were doing, but we had this auction, and we were auctioning book clubs in our time, and artists were coming in. You had Henry Winkler, all kinds of celebrities offering their time, joining in. And within 2 weeks, we raised over $125,000 for this Project Shema to help students on college campuses. And so I'm still part of this. We're now over 2 years, almost, 2 years nearly in the making. We're exactly as long as, 505 days, basically. So from this group, I'm going to show you this. We 75 Jewish authors, if you can see this on Being Jewish Now, 75 Jewish authors, influencers, and podcasters said, what can we do to use our words to commemorate October 7th for the 1-year anniversary? So Zibby Owens, who many of you may know, her publishing house helped put together, and she's the editor of this, and got all of us together to write an essay. And it's not just the hard challenges, but also about the beauty of Judaism. Jewish joy is in there. I wrote about my grandmother, and her impact on my life. That was my essay. But this beautiful book has been on the bestseller list for 12, 13 weeks already. And all the proceeds go to the Artists Against Anti-Semitism. So we're trying to do whatever we can to fight back.
Yeah, I applaud you for that. Your own Zelda. You're the instead of Zibby, it's Zelda. There, for those of you who are watching, it was in the chat, but we do have copies of that available at the JCC for purchase, so you can get a copy of that book. And I think I'm going to do that the next time I am there, because I've seen it there. And do you feel like it's made an impact on college campuses? I've seen, incidentally, because I do work with college students, that it hasn't been as bad as it was
Well, things have changed, and I think, for a lot of various reasons, but now there is a lot more accountability, and, universities and administrators and professors who are enabling this anti-Semitism on campus can no longer do this without free reign. So there has been a big movement to fight back.
Right, which is
For
great, and it's
all kinds
wonderful
of
that you're part of it.
Whether the administrators or the presidents were on Capitol Hill having to explain why they didn't do enough to help students or what have you for various reasons, or the fact that many Jewish contributors to college campuses pulled their funds for those very same reasons. So there's been a lot of fighting back and helping these students.
Right. Yeah, which is really so needed.
But there's a lot of work to still be done.
Absolutely, absolutely, I agree. What do you, if we're changing a little bit, not to just, obviously it's a
Sure.
very serious topic, but just to kind of move it around a
Pivot.
little bit. Last time when we met, you had the exciting news about Sharon Stone. Is there anything going on with the film for Woman on Fire?
So it's super slow. There was the artist strike, then there were the fires, and so very slow. So nothing to report right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you were making Goddess of Warsaw into a movie, whom would you cast as Barr?
Oh, there's so much with that. Well, actually, just to give you a little bit of news, I did sign a contract with 3 women in Hollywood uh, to hopefully turn Goddess into a film or into a series.
Oh,
So,
that would be awesome.
yeah. So I'm more interested in who you think would be great for Goddess or some of the people here.
Have everybody put it into the chat because I have to say I'm not so good at the casting anymore. So I want to say, let me see. This book shows excellent. Oh, so you can look at the comments, but everyone is just saying how wonderful this is. Is there a
Oh,
fun fact about yourself that might surprise everyone relating to any of your books?
yes, actually, there is a fun fact. Okay, we may have discussed this before. Oh, actually, yeah, we may have related to Woman on Fire.
Yeah,
But when I was 17 years old, I was in high school
I
and
remember this.
I was on an internship program in Springfield, Illinois. There were 50 students chosen from all over Illinois to work closely with our state representative, a state senator, for 6 months during high school and to live there during high school. And so while I was there, and this is before cell phones and everything. So this is 100 years ago. While I was there, I was approached by a special law enforcement unit, and they asked me, would I be willing to be used as bait to help break a sex trafficking ring? Do you remember this story?
I remember this story. Yeah.
So, for those who don't remember it, be used, used as bait. And in those days, you didn't have to get your parents' permission for anything.
But yeah.
Yeah, it's not like today where parents know every minutia of their kids' lives, and I'm guilty as well. But in those days, you didn't, you could be 17 and sign off on this. And I was like, yes, I am in. And in fact, I didn't even tell my parents for 10 years. But I was used as bait in real time, meaning there were no phones, it was live. And we broke a sex trafficking ring, and people were arrested, including politicians. So you can imagine for a 17-year-old, this was my aha moment. But I knew in that moment, I was going to go after the hard stories, the tough stories, go after the truth, no matter what, as a journalist and later on as an author. But that was probably a really big influence on me as a teenager, and
Right.
what
Yeah.
would take place, the steps I would later take in life because of that.
If you would have been Zelda
I
in the
guess.
in this story,
Exactly.
you would have
Look
been
out.
Zelda
Don't
leading the
mess with
charge.
me.
Don't mess with Lisa.
Don't
She's
mess
gonna
with
be there. That's right. That's right. Um, I think we have time for this story, but there was another story that I heard you with an interview with another person, how you got your job with the Chicago Women Today, the magazine in Chicago, Women Today or something like that.
Today,
That was a funny story.
Chicago
And I
woman.
have a similar story, which is why I thought it was funny. If you could just tell it quickly, if you don't mind, I thought it was very funny.
So this was, I was right out of grad school, and I was trying to get a job as a journalist, and I was at a health club working out, and I hear over the locker bank 2 women discussing that, she was the managing editor of a woman's magazine, and she needed to hire an editor, and she was going to put an ad in the next day. So I'm in my towel, and I thought to myself, oh my God, this is not optimal, but it's now or never. What's the worst thing that could happen? So I went around the locker bank in a towel, and the 2 women were naked getting dressed. Long story short, we did the interview in our towels on the bench, and I got the job, and I was the managing editor of a women's magazine in Chicago.
You've always been fearless. I think women do their best work in the spas.
Do their
I had
best
a
work.
similar
Yes,
story where I had a coaching session at a spa in my bathrobe.
yes,
The same
yes.
sort of thing, which actually propelled me to write my book. So it's kind of it was just kind of struck home. What are you working on right now, or what's your next
So,
story?
so I'm actually, after 3 years and 500 events back to back to back, I'm taking a big break come April through the fall, and I'm going to be working on a new book. I'm not going to give too much away because I'm really at the first stages of it, and but the background is the Ghost Army, which in 1943 there was a special rogue unit in America made up of artists, and this unit was assigned to create a fake division and to go around Normandy area and basically act as a diversion. So they had fake tanks, fake weapons, and it was all made up of artists plucked from some of the best art schools around and in the 1940s. And so 1,100 men were made to look like 30,000. And the Nazis' focus was right on them. And the real unit went around and basically helped win the war. And so there's going to be a Ghost Army 2.0, a rogue CIA agent, a young woman who gets involved, and there's murder, and there's terror, and there's love, and there's strong, fiery women, and it's everything I love to write and read, the whole kitchen sink in one book. So I'm
We
working.
can't wait to read it, and we
Yeah.
can't wait to have you back to talk about it. And
Yeah.
just Maya wrote that maybe Rachel McAdams might be it might be a good casting.
Yes, bring her in.
Bring her in. We'll send her the book. You got to do that
Send her the
again.
book. Send her the book.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much. This has been so delightful as always. It's always
Oh
a
my
pleasure
gosh.
speaking with you and
Thank you.
learning about your process. And so thank you so much for
Yeah,
joining us.
and I wanted to say that for those of you who, I'm very open and I share my process and all my different book adventures online. So you can follow me on Lisa Barr 18 if you have Instagram, or Lisa Barr author on my Facebook. I love being very interactive with my readers. So please feel free to do that. And I really appreciate all that you do for books and authors and, putting all this together. And I'm so glad we had a second time together, which is great. And really, thank you to everyone who came and supported my work and, praying for Israel and the hostages, most importantly, to come home, every last hostage. Am Yisrael Chai, and so important to me and so important to so many of us. So, thank you
Thank you,
for having.
Lisa. Thank you so much for your time and for sharing with us. And thank you, Lisa, for asking such wonderful questions. We learned so much, and we thank you so much for your time. We'll be sending out the link to purchase The Goddess of Warsaw and also on Being Jewish today as a follow-up to everyone. Thank you to Kean University and the Jewish Book Council. Have a wonderful evening, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Bye.